A figure stirs, pushing themselves up from the cold ground. Their first thought, a dazed question. Where am I? Lost in a desolate landscape, a flicker of movement in a shard of glass catches their eye. A reflection that promises answers or perhaps more questions. Staring into the mirror, the young man's confusion turns to outrage. The face staring back is not his own, a stranger's eyes meeting his with terrifying familiarity. A desperate cry escapes him. What happened to my face? But his panic is cut short by a shimmering, translucent screen materializing before his very eyes. The words on the screen deliver a chilling verdict. He has become a level 1 goblin. A scream of pure, unadulterated terror rips through the air. His mind races. Why a goblin of all things? He knows this world. Its fantasy frontier, a revolutionary, cutting-edge game, a AAA title celebrated across the globe for its breathtaking graphics, and a story that captivated millions, including him. Ethan knew it inside and out. It consistently topped the charts for RPGs, and he had poured countless hours into it every single day. His thoughts race back to the night before. He remembers it with perfect clarity. The repetitive grind, the endless hunting of low-level goblins. He had simply fallen asleep at his keyboard. Could that be it? Could his mundane end be the reason for this bizarre new beginning? He glances back at his reflection. The system labels him as a goblin, a member of the goblin race. Yet, the face looking back, with its sharp but familiar features, looks remarkably, unnervingly human. Just as he processes this paradox, another system notification chimes, its message floating in the air before him. Synchronization will now commence. Instantly, a flood of foreign memories, sharp as glass fragments, begins to pierce his consciousness. They are not his memories, but they are becoming part of him. Through the haze of pain, Ethan whispers, I understand. These memories belong to the body's previous owner, someone who had lived this life on the game's infamous hard mode. His spiraling thoughts are interrupted by a gentle creak. A small girl peeks through the doorway, her voice soft. Big brother, it's morning. You'll be late if you don't hurry. Still reeling, Ethan manages a weak smile, pushing aside the chaos in his mind. I'll get ready now, he replies, his voice steady despite the tremor in his soul. Soon, they are walking through the bustling city streets. The little girl, his new sister, skips beside him. She hums a cheerful tune, presenting him with a small basket. I made this for you, she says. A genuine smile touches his lips. You're so kind, he tells her. I can't wait to try it. However, a creeping sense of familiarity washes over him. The winding path and the sweeping scenery feel like an echo from a forgotten dream. As he scans his surroundings, the feeling intensifies, a distinct memory from a life that wasn't his own. The chilling realization then crashes down upon him. This world is a perfect, living replica of the game, Fantasy Frontier. He pulls his hood down, shielding his face as he delves into the fragmented memories he inherited from this body's former occupant. He and his sister, Lily, were orphans, now making their way to the estate of their employer, Vil, after the untimely loss of their parents, a man who was known to treat them as little more than property. Suddenly, during their walk, Lily falters, a wave of illness making her trip. Her brother's reflexes are instant. He catches her before she can fall, his voice filled with concern as he asks if she is all right. Lily offers a weak smile, thanking him and murmuring how secure she feels with him always there to protect her. She then adds how deeply grateful she is, for in her world of darkness, he is her only guide. His presence is her anchor. Yet, the protagonist feels the crushing weight of his reality. He had vowed to protect her forever, but that promise now seemed like a cruel joke, knowing he was reincarnated into the weakest demonic clan imaginable, the Goblin race. Nevertheless, a fierce resolve hardens within him. He would not just survive in this world, he would thrive. His mind raced with possibilities as they finally arrived at Merchantville's mansion on the Demon Continent, wondering what his first move should be. The protagonist guides his sister to her quarters, his simple farewell of, I'll see you later, laced with unspoken worry. He reflects on his fate, to serve as a menial laborer in the mansion, all to provide for Lily, whose sight had been stolen from her. Upon meeting Merchantville, he is met with cold indifference and immediately ordered to begin hauling the heavy black ore. Later, as he struggles with the back-breaking work, a figure sidles up beside him and delivers a vicious kick to the cart's wheel. The cart lurches violently, and the unexpected force sends the young man sprawling onto the hard, unforgiving ground. Cruel laughter rings out as a blond boy and his companions sneer at him, taunting him to move faster. The boy then leans in close, his voice dripping with scorn. Tell me, is it difficult to accomplish anything when you lack any aptitude for the darkness element? Ignoring the jibe, our hero silently hefts the cart, but his tormentor's friends begin to whisper among themselves. They've heard a rumor that he somehow passed the entrance exam for the illustrious Butch Magic School, a feat considered impossible since only the absolute elite are accepted. The blonde scoffs, mocking that even a lowlife like him must have tried a little harder for once to get in. Their gaze then falls upon him, still on the ground, quietly gathering the scattered contents of his cart. They taunt him, asking if he plans to stay there all day, before turning their backs and walking away without a second glance. Their parting shot is a cruel suggestion. While he's already kneeling, he might as well eat some grass like the animal they believe him to be. A hot flash of anger courses through him, a bitter reminder of his place at the absolute bottom of this world's harsh hierarchy. Once the heavy black ore is finally unloaded, he retrieves the simple lunchbox lovingly prepared by his sister. He finds a place to sit, his mind racing. According to a map in the mansion, it is the year 125 of the Demon Continent calendar. This confirms his suspicion. He is living in the game's opening act, a time when his knowledge of the future will be an invaluable weapon. Lost in these strategic thoughts, his gaze drifts upward, and his breath catches at the impossible sight unfolding above. Vast, shimmering magic circles materialize across the sky, and from their ethereal gates, legions of armored knights begin to descend. Stunned into disbelief, his mind screams a single question. What in the world is happening? Then, a jolt of recognition hits him. He knows that armor, the legendary Holy Knight set from the game. At that very instant, the city erupts in a symphony of panicked screams. Cries of, "The enemy is here," echo through the streets. But nearby, a girl named Lily simply watches, her expression calm and uncomprehending. While she remains eerily still, the shouts intensify, clarifying the horror. The hero's army is laying siege to their city, but our hero's mind is elsewhere, grappling with a critical detail. This is the deepest, most remote region of the Demon Continent. How could the human army have possibly reached this far? A chilling possibility takes root. The timeline is accelerating, moving faster than the game he remembers. Just as this thought solidifies, the Holy Knights begin their indiscriminate assault, a terrifying echo of the events he'd only ever experienced on a screen. In the heart of the burgeoning chaos, they cut down anyone and everyone deemed an enemy, their holy crusade a whirlwind of destruction. An old knight lets out a chilling cackle, telling the townsfolk this is the price for defying their human masters. He warns them to flee for their lives, but the protagonist's only thought is for his sister. He finds Lily trembling on the ground. He scoops her into his arms, telling her they have to go. Just then, the boy who had been tormenting him shoves past, a sneer on his face. He lands a solid punch, snarling for him to get out of the way. His group is making for a secret passage to escape. Ignoring him, the protagonist clutches his sister, asking if she's hurt. She nods, but their moment of relief is shattered. A knight appears, declaring that he's found them. With a predatory smile, he remarks on what a pity it is their little escape attempt has failed. The protagonist shields his sister with his own body, his mind racing with the cold truth that he stands no chance. Still, he screams for Lily to run as far as she can, just before a brutal blow sends him to his knees. As darkness creeps into his vision, he thinks, I was just reborn, and now I'm going to die again. Is this truly the end? But then, a voice echoes in the void of his fading consciousness. The voice muses that while it was responsible for his reincarnation, events had not unfolded as it had planned, admitting a certain degree of surprise. It had to intervene now, it explained, because the extinction of an entire race would be a genuine disaster, and for that reason, the voice declares, it will bestow upon him its power. In that instant, a system message floods his mind, informing him that all forms of dark magic have been acquired. He's stunned, staring at his system panel as he mutters how his once useless stats have shot to their maximum potential once more. The voice explains that this is all it can do for now, warning that he won't be able to wield the full scope of this power immediately. He will have to master it gradually, step by step. The voice adds that he has his own swift death and its personal benevolence to thank for this gift. The voice cuts short its explanation, insisting the protagonist has no more time to waste. It warns that his consciousness will soon return, and that he must vanquish his enemies. True to the prediction, the young man awakens moments later, lost in a fog of confusion. The knight levels a finger at Lily, sneering that her turn for elimination has arrived. With a sinister laugh, he prepares to lunge, but the protagonist rises to his feet and begins a steady walk toward them. He implores them to wait, but the knights charge without hesitation, taunting that he clearly doesn't know when to surrender. A profound seriousness settles on the protagonist's face as he recalls the mysterious voice he heard just moments before. It had commanded him to defeat his enemies, and so, he unleashes his dark boost ability in the blink of an eye. Moving with blinding speed, he effortlessly fells several holy knights in a matter of seconds. Unleashing the full, terrifying extent of his dark power, He continues to systematically cut down the knights until most of them are defeated. The elderly knight, watching the onslaught, cannot begin to process the massacre that has just unfolded before his eyes. His entire body begins to tremble with fear, but the protagonist gives him no time to recover. He instantly appears behind the old man, his voice a low growl as he asks if he was planning to harm his little sister. The knight spins around, terrified, demanding to know what manner of creature the protagonist truly is. While effortlessly ending the old man's life, he replies with a chilling calmness that he is nothing more than a mere goblin. Meanwhile, in the city, an official named Merchantville is announcing to the public that reports have come in. He declares that the hero's army has been completely routed, causing some residents to wonder who could have possibly defeated the knights. While others are simply relieved that the immediate danger has passed, the protagonist sits quietly in a corner with his sister. A notification suddenly appears in his vision, announcing that he has received the Level 1 Awakening mission. It states that the range of his dark magic has been extended, but the update is immediately followed by an intense, splitting pain in his head. It feels as if the darkness itself is trying to consume him. Lily hears her brother cry out in agony and is instantly overcome with worry. When asked if he was all right, he masked the pain with a weary smile, his mind racing with the realization that he could now unlock an even greater power. Just then, a blonde-haired boy emerged from the crowd, making his way to the center of the attention. "It's a relief that everyone is safe," he began, pausing for dramatic effect. "I didn't want to reveal this, but it was I who defeated the hero's army." The announcement stunned the onlookers, and Merchantville, utterly impressed, asked if he was speaking the truth. He confirmed it with a confident nod, claiming he used the very dark magic he'd been secretly training. Our hero heard this audacious lie and remained perfectly still, his face a mask of cold observation. The residents erupted with excitement, instantly hailing Butch as their savior. He held up a hand, feigning humility. "Please, everyone, stop. I only did what had to be done. However," he continued, his voice laced with cunning, "if you truly wish to know how I vanquished those knights, then you must follow me to the mansion. Be warned, such a story comes with a certain price." Listening to the blonde boy's elaborate performance, our protagonist finally understood the entire charade. It was a clear and shameless grab for fame and fortune, played out before a crowd of eager townspeople. As they buzzed with anticipation to hear the legendary savior's story, the blonde boy's eyes scanned the crowd and locked onto something that displeased him. Seeing our hero and his sister seated calmly, he commented with a sneer, "I'm surprised you two are still alive. You're a tough one," he added mockingly. At that, our protagonist slowly rose to his feet. "Your claim of saving everyone," he stated, his voice cutting through the chatter, "is a complete lie." The boy's confident facade cracked, and he nervously ordered our hero to stop talking nonsense. But our protagonist's gaze was unyielding and serious. "If I defeat you in a duel, will you admit you were lying?" The blonde's friends tensed up, but he waved them down, a cruel smile spreading across his face as he accepted the challenge. Without warning, he unleashed his magic, firing a concentrated blast at our hero as he answered the question. "If you win," he sneered, "I'll admit everything." Unfazed, our protagonist steeled himself and unleashed his own torrent of dark power. A cataclysmic explosion of energy erupted from him, and through the shockwave, the blonde boy screamed, "He's engulfed in flames. This is what you get for pretending to be brave," he jeered, confident that the battle was already over. The crowd recognizes the fearsome magic, the same power that supposedly crushed the hero's army, but a cold dread seizes Butch as he realizes this overwhelming force is not his own. That dread spirals into sheer terror as the energy coalesces into the ghastly form of a dark demon, its shadows completely engulfing him. As the dark magic constricts around the blonde imposter, our protagonist's voice cuts through the silence, asking if he was truly the one who defeated the knights. While being consumed by the terrifying illusion, Butch panics and stammers a yes, causing our protagonist to amplify the crushing weight of his magic. He orders Butch to stop the charade and speak the truth, and the blonde, seeing no escape from the encroaching darkness, finally breaks. He begins screaming his confession, admitting he was lying, that he cowered in a warehouse and had nothing to do with saving the city. With a simple snap of his fingers, our protagonist dissipates the illusion, leaving a panicked Butch scanning his surroundings, trying to grasp what just occurred. The protagonist reflects inwardly that he had just unleashed the evil eyes from level 35, a power of profound illusion. He knows that anyone who meets the caster's gaze under its influence is immediately plunged into a vivid, terrifying hallucination. He then turns and walks to his sister, calling for her to leave with him, leaving the townspeople utterly mesmerized and confused. They clamor amongst themselves, desperate to know what just transpired, who this mysterious young man is, and if he could be the real hero who defeated the Holy Knights. He glances back and flatly says no, and as he walks away, he makes it perfectly clear that he has no knowledge of who vanquished the hero's army. Our protagonist understands his strange fate. He was reincarnated as a pathetic goblin, but also remembers that at the very moment he was about to perish, a change occurred. In that final moment, he was bestowed with an incredible power, and now, with the might of darkness at his command, he vows to become the savior of this world. After putting distance between themselves and the stunned crowd, the two siblings find a moment of peace and sit down together again. Lily confesses to her brother that the recent surge of events has left her feeling deeply weary and overwhelmed. Our protagonist asks his sister to come closer, and touching her face, he channels his dark healing ability, a forbidden art flowing from his fingertips. He thinks to himself that Lily has been blind from birth, but he harbors a desperate hope. Could a high-level healing spell finally restore her sight? After a tense moment, she begins to slowly flutter her eyes open, her expression transforming into one of pure, unadulterated shock. For the first time, she can see the world clearly, her brother's face coming into focus as she immediately asks, her voice trembling with disbelief, how this is even possible. He explains that recent events have unlocked a new capability within him, allowing him to wield the forbidden arts of dark magic. Lily, intrigued but skeptical, tells her brother his story lacks conviction. He pauses, looking thoughtful before he speaks again. He suggests that perhaps his latent potential has finally awakened. Still puzzled, his sister questions how that could be possible. After all, she reasons, they are nothing more than simple goblins. Leo offers a warm smile, gently placing a hand on his little sister's head. He confesses that his greatest happiness comes from seeing her fully healed. Through tears of joy, a radiant smile spreads across Lily's face. She affirms her belief in him, saying this was always expected from the brother she knew was the greatest of them all. Leo pulls her into a comforting embrace, stroking her hair, but the tender moment is shattered by a series of system notifications. They informed him of the completion of his Level 2 Awakening mission, which had greatly extended the range of his dark magic abilities. A final message declared that the Fairy Goblin seed package would now be implanted, leaving Leo utterly baffled and questioning what was unfolding. Suddenly, a figure begins to emerge from the system interface, offering a polite apology for the sudden intrusion. It explains that this development is the express wish of a certain individual, leaving them with absolutely no other choice in the matter. As the siblings stare in astonishment at the entity materializing from thin air, the creature introduces itself as a fairy goblin. It declares that its sole mission is to guide Leo to the clandestine village of the goblins. Despite the strangeness of the situation, the fairy expresses a sincere hope that he will find a way to get along with everyone there. Then, with a knowing smile, the fairy addresses Leo as a powerful and unparalleled mutation, a being unlike any other. The young man's curiosity is piqued by the prospect of a secret goblin village, and later, as they journey through the deep woods, Leo observes the fairy goblin, recalling how the game Fantasy Frontier had always prided itself on an open world where anything could happen. He mused that its game system was heralded as the most sophisticated in its genre, powered by an incredibly advanced artificial intelligence. This engine granted immense freedom for the evolution of its various races. As Leo opens his mouth to speak, however, the fairy whirls around instantly, demanding to know what he wants. Flustered, Leo quickly dismisses it, saying it was nothing at all, muttering that he was merely lost in his own thoughts. After a brief journey, the fairy announced to the siblings that they had finally reached the hidden goblin sanctuary. Leon, utterly astonished, remarked that he never suspected a village could exist in such a place. Even with his vast knowledge from the game, the fairy explained that the entire area was veiled by powerful concealment, magic, playfully adding that it wouldn't be much of a secret if just anyone could stumble upon it. With that, she took flight, beckoning the siblings to follow as she guided them toward the village chief. As they walked, Leon couldn't help but notice the curious eyes of the villagers tracking their every move. A group of children quickly gathered around Lily, telling her how pretty she was and eagerly inviting her to play. She glanced at her brother with a hint of worry, but the fairy assured Leon that it was perfectly fine for her to stay. Since his meeting with the chief was a solo affair, the young man gently reassured his sister. He told her to go ahead and play with the other children, promising he would return for her shortly. A bright smile bloomed on Lily's face as she agreed. Leon reflected on how regaining her sight had Werger's Afterheda brought forth a vibrant cheerfulness in her, and seeing her this happy filled his own heart with warmth. Upon arriving at the chief's residence, the elder expressed his profound surprise, remarking that he believed they were the last surviving descendants, just as the goddess had foretold. The prophecy spoke of a day when a young goblin, led by a fairy, would find their way to the village. Gazing at an ancient painting on the wall, the elder revealed a crucial detail. The prophecy commanded them to entrust their most secret treasures to this prophesied individual. Leon was captivated by this revelation, wondering if the divine voice he heard in his moment of near death belonged to the very same goddess. The elder then rose from his seat, asking Leon to wait patiently, for he would be back in just a moment with something important. As the elder departs, the fairy drifts closer to our hero, her voice a soft whisper, insisting that the goblins here possess kind and gentle hearts. She paints a bleak picture of their existence, a constant struggle in a land where food and resources are heartbreakingly scarce. With a somber tone, she speaks of the other races who have cast them out, and of the heroes' armies who hunt them relentlessly. To those forces, they are nothing more than a passing stain to be wiped from a blade. She argues this is not the law of nature, but a calculated purge. A shadow of fear crosses her face as she confesses her belief that their hidden sanctuary will not remain safe for much longer. Hearing her words, a storm of anger brews within him. In the world he knew, the game, goblins were merely the first obstacle. But now, he is one of them, a creature he once saw as fodder, and the sheer irony of his fate is a bitter pill to swallow. Just then, the village chief reappears, breaking the heavy silence and returning to his side. He presents a small, worn item to our hero, urging him to accept it. As the young man unrolls the scroll, his eyes widen in disbelief. He immediately turns to the old goblin, demanding an explanation. The elder's reply is heavy with the weight of generations, speaking of their tribe's frailty. He explains that this weakness is a direct result of being shunned by all others, a slow poison that has pushed their people to the very edge of vanishing forever. His gaze becomes intense as he declares that perhaps our hero can forge a new path, and for that sliver of hope, they are placing their entire destiny in his hands. The chosen one, as they call him, rises to his feet, his thoughts interrupted by the distant sight of several children running freely outside. But in the next moment, that innocence shatters as they burst into the hut, their small voices crying out, pleading for him to please help them. They are followed by a crowd of villagers, their faces etched with desperation and hope, professing their unwavering faith in the goddess's prophecy concerning him. As one, they fall to their knees, a sea of bowed heads and outstretched hands, their collective prayer a single, desperate plea for salvation. Later, surrounded by the silence of the deep forest, he contemplates his new reality, recalling that goblins have always been the most fragile of creatures. Yet, he remembers from his old life that their true strength was never in single combat, but in their overwhelming numbers, a tide of bodies. And he knows for a fact that certain high-ranking goblin species possessed an almost unbelievable capacity to multiply their ranks. He wrestles with a paradox. How could a race with such advantages, such a potential for growth, truly be on the verge of being wiped from existence? He senses that the hero's unnaturally swift progress is no mere coincidence. A hidden current must be at play, a secret he isn't yet privy to, while the fairy, oblivious, questions their purpose here. She asks for his reason, and he rises to his feet, declaring with cold certainty, "There's something I need to verify." With a mere thought, his system interface materializes, casting an ethereal glow upon his focused expression. His objective is clear: to map the full extent of his unlocked abilities by meticulously analyzing every piece of system data. The protagonist notices that the dark spells he's acquired are ominously grayed out, powerful but currently inaccessible. He correctly deduces that these potent abilities must be unlocked by successfully completing specific missions. He also observes a strange chaos in their arrangement, a lack of any discernible order that hints at a deeper complexity. This suggests a hidden skill tree programmed into the backend, and he knows his potential extends far beyond mere spells. After fully comprehending his current stats, the truth is undeniable. His fundamental attributes are now staggeringly powerful. His gaze locks onto a massive boulder. In a flash, he's before it, whispering, "Let's test my physical strength first." He drives his fist into the stone, and the explosive impact instantly sends a web of deep cracks across its surface. His sister and the fairy watch in stunned excitement, yet a flicker of dissatisfaction crosses his face. This wasn't enough. The protagonist then unleashes his level 10 burst ability, and the colossal boulder is utterly annihilated in a blast of force. Immediately, he summons a new power, its raw energy erupting so violently that the fairy and his sister are forced to shield themselves. He proceeds to test his entire arsenal, with each consecutive ability proving more overwhelming than the last. Later, while studying the scroll from the village chief, the young man notes how it helps to structure his understanding. The scroll details various schools of magic, enhancement, restoration, and the debilitating art of weakening magic. It also covers barrier magic for defense, offensive magic for destruction, and the versatile elemental infusion magic. With this new knowledge in hand, the protagonist feels the pieces falling into place, the path forward becoming sharper and more defined. This knowledge confirmed the vast spectrum of magic at his command. He was confident it would be more than enough for the task ahead. All that remained were the final, delicate calibrations. Following the map etched onto the village chief's scroll, Cain journeyed to the designated location. They soon stood before a hidden cemetery bordering the Goblin village. The fairy whispered that this was where the ancestral heroes of the goblins lay in eternal rest. Cain allowed his shadowy energy to unfurl, a palpable aura of immense power that left no doubt about his intentions. He announced that with this power, he would extinguish the endless war between the heroes' legions and the demon lord's army. From the earth, ancient figures rose from their deep slumber: the hobgoblin, the dragon goblin, the goblin maiden, and the formidable goblin general. The fairy watched in utter astonishment, whispering to herself that the real story was only just beginning. Cain turned, his voice resonating with the weight of ages, and began to speak of the hundreds of years of history. He explained that even the most scorned and feeble goblin, against all conceivable odds, could give rise to a singular prodigy, a being who wielded the ultimate power of their kind, and that these heroic spirits, once confined to memory, could be called forth with all their memories intact. As he finished his declaration, the entire legion of summoned heroes stood silently before him, awaiting his command. The goblin general was the first to act, dropping to one knee. "My Lord Messiah," he proclaimed, "I am at your service." A solemn gravity settled upon Cain's features as he laid out his grand design, that this very power will be the key to ending the brutal, unending war between the heroes and the demon lord's army. Furthermore, he would force both the hero and the demon lord to their knees, and from their submission, forge a lasting peace for the world. Gazing upon the loyal army before him, he knew his destiny was sealed. He would become the Goblin Messiah. Later that night, as Cain drifted in a peaceful slumber, a distant voice began to echo in the corridors of his mind, calling his name. The call persisted, but he remained lost in his dreams, until a sudden, sharp command shattered his peace, jolting him awake. In a flash of ethereal light, a magnificent being materialized, prompting the protagonist to demand her identity. She revealed herself as the goddess of the goblins, a statement that intrigued him until a vivid memory surfaced. He realized the goddess bore a striking resemblance to a portrait he had seen hanging within the village chief's house. This led him to surmise that even the lowest-ranked monsters had their own deities, though her aura felt far from divine. To him, she appeared more like an alluring older woman, and as if reading his mind, the goddess asked if he was entertaining impure thoughts. The young man grew flustered, hastily denying it, but she waved it off, saying she would let it slide this one time. She explained that their first meeting was too brief, but now, she was there to finally tell him the truth. The goddess was ready to reveal precisely why she had bestowed her incredible powers upon him. She spoke of a grim history, where thousands upon thousands of goblins were mercilessly slaughtered in endless campaigns, their lives treated as utterly despicable. They were known as the weakest of all beings, defined by their lack of power. But she emphasized a crucial point. This very weakness, she explained, was the secret source of their unmatched potential. A paradox that left the protagonist utterly confused. He pressed her for answers, asking what she could possibly mean by such a contradiction. The goddess spoke of the inheritance of reincarnation, revealing that he now carried the collective knowledge and darkness of all his fallen brethren. She explained that when the essences of millions of the weakest beings converge into one, they forge a new entity of unparalleled power. For this very reason, the goddess made one thing crystal clear: his beloved sister was not the only one he had the power to save. And with those cryptic words, she began to fade away. Her final, echoing command was that she was entrusting the very fate of the goblin race to his hands. Then, he awoke. He sat up with a start, noticing the morning light filtering through his window, his mind immediately consumed by the goddess's profound words. As he contemplated the future of his people, a powerful resolve hardened within him. He vowed to create a new world, one where his kind would never again suffer oppression, and with this newfound purpose, he began to write a letter to complete his application for the Academy of Dark Magic, confident that what he'd written would be more than sufficient to secure his place. Observing him, the fairy voiced her doubts, but he simply turned and met her gaze, assuring her that his plan was sound and she could place her trust in him. He then drifted toward the window, his gaze fixed on the horizon, reaffirming his vow to forge a world where his sister and every person from their village could finally live in peace. However, to achieve such a dream, his first and most crucial target was one of the 7 elites of the Demon Lord's army, the very tyrant who commanded this entire region. The man was known as the cruel King Duel, The protagonist knew that the Academy of Dark Magic served as little more than a training ground for the king's dominion, and more importantly, that Deal himself was the founder of the esteemed institution. This meant that if he could successfully enroll and become a cadet, an official audience with the founder was practically guaranteed. It would be the perfect, unsuspecting moment to eliminate his target. He turned to his sister, bidding her farewell and asking her to wait for him. He promised his absence would be brief, vowing to return before she even had a chance to miss him. He found comfort in knowing his sister would be well, sheltered and protected within the secret goblin village. Lily, her heart heavy with worry for her brother, nodded in agreement but pleaded with him to exercise extreme caution. The moment he turned to embark on his mission, the goblin fairy began to circle him playfully. He explained that he was on his way to take the Academy's entrance exam, and then asked what her intentions were. She smiled, stating that her official duty to him was now concluded. However, she quickly made it clear she would be joining him, confessing that his mission sounded far too intriguing to ignore. Upon their arrival in the domain of the cruel King Diul, they found themselves in the sprawling city that lay in the shadow of the great castle. The protagonist turned, observing that the main path forward appeared to lead directly to the academy itself. His thoughts were suddenly shattered by a man's furious roar. Can nobody manage something so simple? A horrific scene unfolded before him. A girl bound in chains was apologizing meekly to a man who silenced her with a vicious blow, shouting that his patience had run out. "Because of you, I'll be late for my meeting," he seethed, as nearby whispers from the crowd quickly revealed the man's identity to our hero, and notes how he always resorts to such cruelty when displeased. The fairy identifies the poor soul as a goblin slave, but in the end, it's the same tragic story. The relentless discrimination against the so-called lower-ranked races. Our protagonist grows pensive, a flicker of recognition telling him he's seen this vile man somewhere before. Then, the name crystallizes in his memory. Bradley, the slave merchant, a notorious figure from the fantasy frontier saga. He recalls Bradley as a low-tier aristocratic demon who amassed his entire fortune through the sordid business of the slave trade. Intimidation, broken contracts in Bradley's world, any vile act was justified in the endless pursuit of profit. A grim satisfaction washes over our hero as he realizes his obsession with the game's character art book is about to pay off. This is the perfect chance to finally test the true capabilities of his newfound companions. His heroic spirits. Turning with purpose, the young man calls to his fairy, signaling his intent to help the girl. She simply affirms, her expression conveying she had expected nothing less. As our hero kneels to invoke his goblin hero summoning ability, he begins a powerful chant, declaring himself as the one who defies the path of light, a resident of the deepest shadows. "And through this revelation, I will guide you here to display my power," he commands, his voice rising to a shout for the goblin hero to appear. A brilliant magic circle ignites beneath him, and from its depths, an intense power surges, summoning the legendary goblin warrior. She materializes with a satisfying stretch, remarking how wonderful it feels to be alive again, before turning to ask what our hero requires of her. The fairy floats in shock, whispering that for a great ancestor, this legendary hero has a surprisingly carefree demeanor. Our protagonist steps forward, his tone apologetic but firm. "I know this request is sudden, but there is a small matter I need you to take care of." Elsewhere in the city square, Bradley's rage boils over as he viciously orders the collapsed girl to get up. He scoffs that while he knew she was a cheap slave, he hadn't anticipated her being so utterly useless. With a vicious tug, he yanks her off balance, sending her crashing to the stone ground while branding her a complete burden. The townspeople begin to whisper amongst themselves at the public display, just as the merchant turns, interrupted by a clear voice asking for his attention. Evan immediately confronts him, asking what he wants. The young man then pleads with the merchant to stop mistreating the girl. Bradley erupts in laughter, declaring she's his slave, and he can treat her however he wishes. Evan questions if the merchant cares nothing for her value. With a sigh, the man admits that, of course, he does. A faint smile plays on Evan's lips as he says, "In that case, here's my proposition. I'll buy the slave," he declares, "and I'll pay 100 times her original price." At that moment, the merchant is utterly bewildered. He wonders if this is some kind of joke or if the stranger is serious. Bradley then clarifies that the girl was cheap, but she still fetched a price of 30 gold coins. He wants to confirm if Evan is truly suggesting he will pay 100 times that amount. The young man affirms, stating the money is already on hand. He then signals for the goblin girl to bring it forth. It isn't long before she begins dropping several heavy sacks of coins onto the ground. The merchant is astonished, realizing the amount he's seeing truly is 3,000 coins. He asks if Evan is certain about this. Evan nods and tells him to just take it all. He then asks if they have an agreement. Bradley begins snatching up the money like a madman. He shouts that the deal is done, and he'll hand her over, even if the young man has a change of heart later. Shortly after, the merchant abandons the girl with Evan, grabs his cart, and continues on his journey. In a trembling voice, the girl who had endured so much asks Evan why he did all of that for her. Evan smiles warmly and reveals that he, too, is a goblin, just like her. He explains that this kinship is why he had to help, reassuring her that she no longer needs to worry because she is safe now. Still puzzled, she asks why he would spend such a vast sum. He calmly tells her not to worry, revealing that the coins were never his to begin with. The girl is baffled by this revelation. Evan knew a secret about Bradley. The slave merchant always kept a large quantity of gold coins stashed away in a chest, stashed inside his cart, a fact he knew, thanks to his prior knowledge of this world, and the unique skills of his goblin girl. The heroic spirit he had summoned possessed unparalleled talents for stealth and infiltration. Therefore, he had instructed her to slip into the merchant's wagon long before their confrontation ever began. Her mission was to liberate the gold coins from their chest, pack them securely, and deliver them to him at the opportune moment. While the gold was indeed obtained through less than honorable means, the far greater truth remained. It's that the despicable practice of slavery has no right to exist in this world, a sentiment punctuated by the goblin girl's wry laugh. She explained to the fairy that her master had claimed the coins as his own, and from a certain perspective, he hadn't spoken a single lie. Aiden reached out to the freed girl, asking gently if she could stand. After a brief hesitation, she offered a quiet thank you and took his hand. He entrusted the fairy with guiding the girl to the safety of a secret village, as he was now heading for the entrance exam of the Dark Magic Academy. He turned, watching her disappear into the distance, before setting off on his own path, a silent vow echoing in his mind. He would rise to the very top of that institution. Before long, he stood before the academy's towering main gates. He knew this place was in constant recruitment of new students. It was the only way it could consistently train and enlist the most elite members for its cause. However, entry was far from guaranteed. A candidate's power had to be extraordinary, which was why even low-ranking monsters were given a chance to prove their worth. If they possessed the necessary skills, they were welcome. Aiden also knew that by becoming a cadet here, he would earn the chance to meet the Academy's founder, the notoriously cruel King Duel. And that meeting was the first step in his grand design to bring down one of the 7 great notables as he strode through the Academy grounds. A sharp voice suddenly cut through the murmuring crowd, an instructor shouting for all participants to form a line immediately. As the line materialized, it swelled into a massive queue, and Aiden found himself positioned at the very back. He sighed, anticipating a long day ahead, but was startled from his thoughts by a soft tap on his shoulder. Turning, he was met by the sight of a beautiful girl who politely stepped closer, her eyes hopeful as she asked if he had anything to eat. Hoping for something sweet, the protagonist begins to rummage through his belongings. He asks her to wait just a moment, his hand finally closing around a small package as he realizes his little sister had prepared it. Inside is a note wishing him good luck, explaining that the chocolates were her own special creation. The blonde girl's eyes immediately lock onto the treat. Without a word of warning, she snatches the box directly from his hand, leaving him stunned by her abruptness. She begins to eat, her expression lighting up with genuine amazement at how delicious they are. The protagonist, however, can only watch in stunned silence. His heart plummets. Those were a precious gift, crafted with love by his little sister, specifically for him. As he drowns in a wave of melancholy, the blonde girl lets out a cheerful laugh, declaring how grateful she is. She explains that stress triggers an insatiable hunger in her, a condition she describes as an internal darkness deficiency. A condition, she adds, that vanishes quickly if she consumes something sweet. At that moment, our hero turns, a bloodthirsty look in his eyes and a terrifying aura rolling off him. He mutters darkly that he had wanted to try them himself. The girl, instantly flustered, wants to know if she has done something wrong. A moment later, realization dawns on her. She erupts in a stream of frantic apologies, insisting she had no idea the chocolates were so precious to him. The protagonist's stern expression remains as he launches into a series of grumbled complaints. The girl listens, thinking he certainly has a lot to say. She then collects herself and declares that, as a sincere apology, she will make sure to return the favor. She introduces herself as Letty and asks for his name, but the young man grows awkward, completely at a loss for what to say. He admits that he doesn't have a name, reflecting that even with the memories he's recovered from before, reincarnating into this current body, his own name is the one thing that stubbornly eludes his memory. The troubling thought crosses his mind that in this world, only low-class monsters or slaves are nameless. He expects her to look down on him, but instead, the blonde girl's face lights up with excitement as she declares she'll give him a name. She thoughtfully considers something cool before her eyes brighten, and she decides to call him Lime. Given his entirely green appearance, she exclaims that the name suits him perfectly. Taken aback by the nickname, he can't help but ask where she came up with it. A gentle smile plays on her lips as she explains she simply found it fitting, adding that it's a true pleasure to finally meet him. Hearing her call him Lime, our hero's own smile mirrors hers, and he assures her the pleasure is entirely his. Just then, a grand magical sigil materializes in the sky above them, its voice booming across the grounds, announcing the imminent start of the entrance examination. It instructs all participants to proceed to the main square, and a visible thrill of anticipation runs through Letty. She turns to Lime, her eyes alight with determination, declaring that they must both give it everything they have. As she speaks, however, they are being observed from a distance by several other disdainful candidates. Murmurs ripple through the gathered crowd in the Academy's main square, many questioning what on earth a goblin is doing among them, vying for a place. The examination commences, and an instructor begins calling names, with each participant stepping forward to showcase their magical prowess. The proctors watch intently, jotting down notes on each performance. When Letty's name is called, she confidently channels her power and unleashes it in a swift, focused blast. The target is effortlessly obliterated, drawing gasps of awe and admiration from the other participants, who are clearly impressed by her formidable skill. The whispers that follow confirm her identity. Such power, they murmur, is to be expected from the renowned princess of the Dark Elves. Lime is equally stunned, his mind reeling with the revelation. Could this friendly girl truly be the legendary Dark Elf princess? He watches her triumphant smile and thinks to himself that appearances can be incredibly deceiving. She was nothing like he would have imagined. He finds himself momentarily wondering if he should adopt a more formal tone with her, but his train of thought is broken when Letty approaches, laughing gleefully. She exclaims that she completely nailed it. Our hero readily agrees, congratulating her on a phenomenal display and noting that at this rate, she is certain to pass the exam with ease. But their celebration is cut short. A voice dripping with condescension interrupts them. It belongs to Hyga, a noble of the vampire race, who claims he was just trying to place Lime's familiar, pathetic face. He sneers, "Oh, it's just that incompetent nobody." Both our hero and Letty are baffled by this stranger's sudden and unprovoked aggression. Hyga closes the distance, his arrogant gaze fixed on our protagonist. "Tell me," he demands, "are you one of Butch's little servants?" He then scoffs at the very idea that Lime is actually here to take the entrance exam. In response, Lime simply takes a deep, calming breath, turns his back, and offers no reply. Letty, however, refuses to stay silent. "Yes, that's exactly right," she snaps, her voice ringing with defiance. "We are here to take the exam," and wonders what her problem is, as Liam's thoughts drift to the perplexing blonde girl. She had abruptly appointed herself his defender, and he was baffled by the source of her unwavering confidence. Believing it all to be illogical, Hagen turns to her, his voice dripping with condescension as he clarifies that her little, delusional outburst would get her nowhere, and that soon enough, the truth of Liam's weakness would be exposed. Though momentarily sullen, her defiance reignites as she spins around, demanding that the protagonist unleash something truly spectacular. Liam takes a steadying breath, his mind racing through the possibilities, before simply stating he will give it his best effort. Letty shouts encouragement, urging him to get fired up and take the test seriously, promising he'll have her full support. The protagonist's gaze locks onto the target, and a sobering thought enters his mind. If he were to truly take this seriously, the entire square would be reduced to dust. He glances at his hand, realizing that up until this point, his only consideration had been unleashing the raw force granted to him by the Goblin goddess. But now, he resolved to treat this as training to master his power, a thought cut short by the instructor's irritated demand to hurry. Liam's focus sharpens, and with a single outstretched finger, he unleashes a torrent of magic that completely obliterates the target. The sheer force of the blast sends a massive shockwave outwards, forcing the nearby participants to shield themselves from the impact. As the swirling dust begins to settle, it reveals a gaping crater carved into the very earth where his power had passed. The instructor's clipboard and quill slip from his numb fingers, his mouth agape in stunned silence, wondering what in the world had just occurred. Meanwhile, amidst the awestruck silence, Liam is consumed by frustration, disappointed in his failure to properly control his incredible power. Hagen and his companions are paralyzed with shock at the display, while an ecstatic Letty rushes over to her friend's side. She gushes that his performance was both amazing and magnificent, leaving him flustered and embarrassed. Liam deflects her praise, claiming he only activated such a high-level spell by pure chance, all while lamenting his complete failure of magical control, and praying this entire incident can be dismissed as a simple dark magic activation test. Lime recalled the brief intermission that followed the conclusion of the written magic exam. Seeing the worried expression on his friend's face, he gently inquired if everything was all right. She admitted to feeling deeply uneasy about a particular section of the test, a subject that had always been her weakness. She then asked if he had performed well, to which Lime replied with quiet confidence that he believed he had. He knew, however, that this test was set within the world of fantasy frontier, making it less a measure of magic and more a quiz on game knowledge. At that moment, his attention was violently diverted by the aggressive approach of Hugh. The bully sneered, warning Lime not to become arrogant over his performance in the earlier practical exam. He dismissed it as a mere fluke of luck, spitting that a talentless nobody like him would never truly master magic. With an unwavering gaze, Lime calmly suggested that the blonde agitator would be better served focusing on his own shortcomings. Instead of wasting his time on them, Hugh became utterly enraged and unsheathed his sword. He snarled that he was about to teach Lime a permanent lesson for his insolence. However, the instructors' voices boomed across the grounds, announcing the combat test was imminent and summoning all participants to the central square. Hugh ground his teeth in frustration, calling the protagonist lucky, but vowing that their dispute was far from settled. Lime remained perfectly composed, not uttering a single word as the students began to gather in the main square. The lead instructor's voice echoed, declaring that the combat portion of the examination was about to commence. He quickly pointed out, however, that the format would be a stark departure from previous years, which had always consisted of one-on-one training matches. From now on, he announced, the participants would not fight each other, but would instead face a common target together. A murmur of confusion swept through the participants, this sudden change sparking whispers about what this mysterious common target could be. Noticing their collective bewilderment, the instructor explained that this was a new policy established by the great Lord Duel. He was, of course, the legendary founder of the Academy, an institution where a student's true mettle is forged. To prove one's worthiness for the Academy, a student must demonstrate the ability to survive an encounter with a superior foe. As those words hang in the air, the massive arena portal begins to grind open, an unnatural, chilling sound echoing from the darkness beyond. A palpable fear spreads through the participants at the haunting sound, just before two enormous eyes ignite within the pitch-black void. A colossal beast tears through the shadows, its piercing roar shaking the very foundations of the arena. Our protagonist, Lime, feels a knot of dread form in his stomach. He recognizes this creature as a thunder dragon. His mind races, wondering if they've been thrown against some late-game area boss, questioning if this monstrosity is truly meant to be their test. The dragon lurches into motion, and chaos erupts as the participants scatter in sheer terror. As the beast begins to gather energy for an attack, the telltale signs do not escape Lime's sharp gaze. With a deafening crackle, the dragon unleashes a devastating blast of pure electricity, forcing the fleeing students to look back, their faces etched with horror. They know instantly there is no way to block or dodge such raw power. A blinding explosion consumes the area, and as the thick dust slowly begins to settle, the aftermath is clear. Countless students are left sprawled on the ground, utterly defeated. Haga, his voice trembling with panic, screams that nobody ever warned them about this. Letty, however, remains frozen in place, her expression unreadable as she watches the dragon lay waste to the arena. Then, as if a switch was flipped, she bursts into motion, sprinting directly towards the beast without a shred of hesitation. A surge of worry hits Lime, and he shouts for her to be careful. As she closes the distance, her voice rings out with determination, shouting that she must pass this test for the sake of everyone in her kingdom. She channels her magic, invoking her wind restraint skill, to conjure several swirling chains of air that lash out and bind the massive dragon. Without pause, she prepares her next spell, a potent wind arrow, but the dragon refuses to be contained for long. It begins to thrash violently, fighting to break free from her chains, and she is stunned by its sheer, overwhelming strength. It takes only a moment for the creature to shatter the magical restraints. The dragon glares down at its defiant challenger and lets out a triumphant, earth-shaking roar. Still clutching the dissipating energy of her wind arrow, Letty closes her eyes, her mind bracing for the inevitable end. This is it, she thinks. This is how I die. But when the final, crushing blow never comes, a wave of confusion washes over her. She dares to open her eyes, only to see an impossible sight. Lime is standing before her, his body a shield against the dragon's ferocious charge. Lime turns his head slightly, his voice steady as he asks if she's all right. Struck with disbelief and awe, she can only manage a simple, yes. Aiden glanced over his shoulder at the dragon, his arcane barrier groaning under the assault, and stated coolly, "This will be quick." Letty's mind reeled in utter confusion, wondering how in the world he could say that while facing a creature of such terrifying power. The dragon, infuriated by the resistance, continued to slam against the barrier, its roars of frustration shaking the very foundations of the city. In that instant, one of the beast's massive horns began to glow with an intense, ominous light, a development that Aiden found deeply unsettling. As if summoned by this dark energy, storm clouds began to gather in the sky, and a massive bolt of lightning descended, striking the dragon dead on. After absorbing the raw energy of the thunder, the dragon charged at Aiden's strained barrier once more, its body crackling with newfound power. This time, the shield shattered like glass. The beast immediately prepared another thunder roar, unleashing it in a devastating blast. A catastrophic explosion engulfed the area below, but Aiden moved like a phantom, grabbing his friend and soaring just above the wave of destruction. He grimly stated, "Things just got more complicated. The dragon has activated its electric super armor mode." Finally realizing she was flying high above the ground, Letty could only stammer, wanting to know how any of this was even possible. Aiden offered a quick apology, admitting, "This is going to take a bit longer than I initially anticipated, so I'll need you to please wait on that rooftop," he said, and with a shocking degree of casualness, he released his grip on her. A scream of pure, unadulterated panic tore from her throat as she plummeted towards the ground, utterly helpless and with no way to fly. Her fall was abruptly cushioned by something impossibly soft, leaving her to wonder in a daze what she could have possibly landed on. The savior was a summoned heroic spirit of Aiden's, the gelatinous Goblin, a unique and amorphous creature of lore. Despite having a body that is a natural non-conductor of electricity, it possesses a critical weakness to extremely dry environments, a vulnerability that led to its extinction following recurring droughts in its native habitat. As the dust settled, Aiden looked down to see the dragon hunting him. He called out to it, their eyes locking in a deadly stare-down. Aiden then activated his dark magic, unleashing a powerful shadow burst. He roared at the formidable beast, "Are you ready for this?" before surging forward, pouring every last ounce of his strength into the charge. The dragon did not hesitate for a second, firing another blinding electric blast just as Aiden's own powerful skill fully activated. With graceful ease, Liam sidesteps the searing lightning bolt. The dragon, enraged, tries again, launching a barrage of volatile electric spheres. But Liam, moving with breathtaking agility, weaves through the deadly projectiles. Before the colossal beast can even process what's happening, Liam closes the distance in a blur, delivering a devastating flying kick directly to the dragon's jaw. The sheer force sends the creature careening backward, smashing into the fortress wall with a cataclysmic explosion that rocks its very foundations. From the impact, massive chunks of stone rain down from above, forcing Hagen and the others to scramble for their lives to avoid being crushed. Staggering to its feet, the enraged dragon prepares to unleash its fury once more, but Liam meets its rage with a terrifying aura of his own. He taunts the beast, challenging it to unleash its full power or face certain defeat. Driven into a frenzy, the creature responds with a deafening, sky-shattering roar. Once more, ominous black clouds gather overhead, rumbling with the promise of a storm. Liam observes this, a knowing look on his face as he repositions himself. This was exactly what he had been waiting for. The dragon had fallen right into his trap, summoning the very storm he needed. In the next instant, he materializes directly behind Hagen, who can only watch the titanic struggle, paralyzed by terror. Before the bewildered swordsman can react, Liam snatches the blade from its sheath. "Just borrowing this," he whispers, before vanishing as quickly as he appeared. Hagen is left utterly stunned, grasping at empty air, as Liam streaks across the battlefield at an impossible speed. With the borrowed blade in hand, he channels his power, activating elemental coding, just as a colossal bolt of lightning descends from the heavens. The raw power of the storm smashes into the incandescent energy radiating from Liam, leaving the onlooking dragon completely bewildered. Unable to comprehend what it's witnessing, it can only watch as Liam skillfully catches and holds the raging thunderbolt with the enchanted blade. He then channels all that captured energy, invoking his skill, Shadow Lightning Blade, and hurls the supercharged attack directly at the dragon. Caught completely by surprise by this astonishing reversal, the beast has no time to defend itself as the attack strikes with brutal, overwhelming force. An immense flash of blinding light engulfs the entire area, followed by an earth-shattering explosion that tears through the air. When the dust finally settles, Liam calmly approaches the smoldering crater, where the once mighty dragon lies, utterly and completely defeated. At that precise moment of victory, a notification window materializes before him, the system informing him that the reincarnated individual, a notification confirms the completion of his Level 3 awakening mission, declaring that the scope of his acquired dark magic has been amplified. It also announces that the demonic sword, Mjolnir, has been successfully claimed from the Thunder Dragon. Yet as Liam inspects his system, a pair of unseen eyes watches him from the shadows. It's the instructor, utterly stunned, realizing that the power he just witnessed defies all known magical conventions. He knows they must now proceed with extreme caution, aware that this unprecedented event must be reported to the Dean. Hagi, his friends, and even Letty are left completely speechless by the raw power they just observed. The examiner turns, announcing the test's conclusion. Several hours later, Letty is shocked when she sees the official results posted. Candidate 153 and participant 154 have both passed. Letty, a bit flustered, admits it's logical that she passed, but she insists that Liam was the one who did all the truly difficult work. He simply smiles in return. He suggests the evaluators likely scored her based on her unwavering courage in the face of the dragon. She crosses her arms, a hint of a proud smirk on her face. She laughs, accepting the compliment but deciding it's best to move on. Liam, however, is captivated by a different detail. He asks her about her full name, Tiara Letty. She explains that since it's quite long, she shortens it to just Letty. But in that moment, a sudden idea strikes her, leaving Liam utterly confused. Letty grabs a pen and marches toward the announcement board, adding the name Liam to the description of the participant who passed. Turning back with a satisfied grin, she declares it looks much better now, especially since it was the name she bestowed upon him. He offers a slightly awkward smile, but secretly finds the gesture incredibly cool. Sometime later, they head to the Academy Center and receive their brand new school uniforms. Letty is overcome with excitement, exclaiming that wearing the uniform finally makes her status as a student feel official. The instructor smiles warmly and informs Liam that his grimoires and robes are waiting for him. He quickly slips into the uniform as the instructor begins to explain the Academy's dormitory system. As the monotonous explanation of the allocation test droned on, Liam's expression soured with undisguised boredom. He cut in, questioning the need for yet another evaluation, to which the instructor simply nodded in firm confirmation. This test, the instructor elaborated, was designed to assess their innate darkness, which would determine their dormitory and class assignments. He returned shortly with an arcane device, and a wave of tense curiosity swept through the room as everyone stared at the strange apparatus. The instructor's voice brimmed with enthusiasm as he confessed his own eagerness to see which class they would be deemed worthy of. Murmurs rippled through the other students, their eyes sizing up the pair, wondering if they were the legendary duo who had conquered the new combat exam. Some whispered that they'd heard it was the most grueling test ever devised, so it was hardly a surprise that only two had emerged victorious. However, looking at the two individuals before them, they cynically concluded that the exam couldn't have been that challenging after all. Letty's ears burned at their condescending remarks and her temper flared, but Liam's steady hand on her arm stopped her, his low voice urging her to stay calm. He reminded her this was neither the time nor the place, and though she begrudgingly agreed, a sullen pout remained fixed on her face. Liam then stepped forward, asking for the details of the allocation test, which the man in charge dismissed as being remarkably simple. He explained that Liam simply needed to stand before the intricate magical structure. The machine would then analyze his darkness levels, and the moment he made contact, the results would flash across a screen overhead. He added, with a note of pride, that the device was a recent and generous gift from the renowned Academy. It was a state-of-the-art instrument, he continued, a sinister smile playing on his lips as he looked at them. The instructor made it crystal clear to Liam that trying to tamper with this machine's results was an exercise in futility. He then gestured for Letty to proceed with the test, and she stepped up, placing her hand on the cold surface of the device. A flicker of surprise crossed her face at the machine's reaction, but it was the man in charge who was left utterly stunned by the outcome. He stared in disbelief, wondering what he was seeing as the system identified her as a dark elf with a knowledge score surpassing 9,000. Her power level registered at an incredible 3,300. And her natural aptitude for dark magic exceeded a score of 30, with an internal darkness level registering at 200. Lime observes the readout, thinking it resembles a status panel, and recognizes that his friend possesses an incredibly high level of internal darkness and extraordinary potential. He knows that with proper training, she will undoubtedly become a highly competent fighter. Once the device processes Letty's information, it announces her qualification for the Lucifer dormitory. The other students are utterly stunned to hear she was assigned to the Academy's most prestigious dormitory. The instructor, visibly disappointed by the outcome, then calls for Lime. As he places his hand on the device, The instructor takes a deep, condescending breath and states that he is obligated by the rules to request his stats. However, he sneers that the result is already obvious, considering Lime is a member of the Goblin race. While releasing a terrifying aura of his own, Lime recalls having seen his attributes during his most recent awakening. Now, curious to see the extent of his growth, he decides to channel his entire well of darkness into the device. The artifact begins to react erratically, alarming the instructor, who stares in confusion, wondering what is happening. In a sudden, blinding flash of light, the device completely shatters. The explosion creates a massive shockwave of wind that startles everyone present. The instructor sees the brand new device, which he just received, standing speechless in utter shock. Meanwhile, Lime awkwardly thinks to himself that he has managed to mess up once again. The examiner's shock turns to rage as he furiously yells, asking if Lime has any idea the device cost 500 gold coins. Lime chuckles and suggests that perhaps the device was simply defective, a comment that only infuriates the instructor more. He shouts that it's impossible because it was a state-of-the-art model, then desperately asks what he is supposed to report to the dean. Lime apologizes, explaining he never intended to break it, but his carefree response makes the instructor even angrier. He points an accusing finger, shouting that since they were unable to measure his stats, Lime will be assigned to the lowest-ranked dormitory. Letty is immediately outraged by the instructor's biased decision. Liam knew this was a disastrous turn of events. Being assigned to the lowest-ranking dormitory would be a crippling setback on his path to becoming a cadet. Meanwhile, as the instructors overseeing the examination debated the anomaly, one among them found their curiosity piqued by the peculiar circumstances. Our protagonist, however, was already a step ahead, his mind racing to find an unconventional path, a shortcut to overcome this unforeseen obstacle. Following this startling twist of fate, within the bleak walls of the Dark Magic Academy's most derelict dormitory, a new plan began to form. Liam began interfacing with his system, meticulously reviewing the data as his thoughts began to crystallize. His immediate objective was clear: achieve recognition as an elite cadet, a status he knew was essential for his ultimate goal. For that coveted rank was the only key to securing an audience with the formidable King Duel, and for that reason alone, he had to succeed. His ultimate ambition was to confront the king, neutralize him, and seize control of his domain. Yet he was acutely aware that from the Academy's bottom rung, this goal seemed almost impossible. The chasm between his position and his ambition felt immense, forcing him to wonder about his next move. What was the most expedient route, the one surefire way to force the Academy to acknowledge his true power? A thought then sparked perhaps he could leverage his connection with Letty, who resided in the most prestigious dormitory, to arrange a transfer. Lost in this reflection, a glint of white beneath a dusty tome caught his eye, drawing his undivided attention. As he retrieved the document, a slow smile spread across his face. It was the very opportunity he had been looking for. The following day, at a registration desk, a young woman looked up in surprise. "Are you certain you wish to register for the magic tournament?" she asked, as our protagonist presented the very paper he had found, his answer a firm and unwavering yes. His mind was already calculating the odds. The magic tournament, an event sponsored by the Dark Magic Academy itself, was an annual crucible, a fierce competition held once a year to identify the single most powerful mage within its hallowed halls. It was a time-honored tradition, a battleground where only the most exceptionally skilled and ambitious students dared to tread. The ultimate victor would be bestowed with a legendary magical treasure, a priceless reward from the personal collection of the Academy's founder, a prize granted by King Duel himself. In that moment, a new path became clear. Even if he failed to become a cadet through conventional means, winning this tournament would undoubtedly force an audience with the king. The girl overseeing the registration could only stare, unaware of the monumental decision being made before her. The administrator seems hesitant to process Leo's entry form, her eyes wide with disbelief as she asks if this is truly only his second day at the academy. He confirms without a hint of doubt. She leans forward, her tone grave, explaining that this is a perilous competition with absolutely no restrictions on the use of magic. She needs to be certain he grasps the full weight of the situation, emphasizing that it's highly recommended for students to have at least a full year of academy training before they even consider participating in such an event. Leo's expression becomes serious, his gaze unwavering as he insists that he understands the risks and, even so, is determined to enter the tournament. She lets out a weary sigh and asks him to wait for a moment, then activates a shimmering magical communication device. She reports to her superior that a peculiar student has appeared in her office, demanding to be entered into the competition. A voice crackles back, filled with amusement, replying that it must be the very boy who shattered their mana-measuring device. The woman glances at Leo, then quietly asks her superior if she should deny the boy's audacious request. A mischievous tone echoes from the device as he answers, "No, let him. There's no problem at all in letting him participate." A moment later, she slides an official form towards Leo, confirming that his request has been accepted. However, she stresses that, as stipulated in the tournament's official rules, he must understand he is entering entirely at his own risk. Leo replies that he understands completely, making it clear that he will accept full responsibility for whatever happens. He thinks to himself that he's finally found the shortcut he was searching for. Later that evening, within the opulent Lucifer dormitory, the gentle sounds of chatter and splashing water fill the air as the girls take their evening bath. Lottie hums a soft tune as she rinses her hair. Her thoughts drift back to the entrance exam, a small smile gracing her lips as she recalls how fortunate she felt to have met Leo. He had been like a prince from a fairy tale, courageously saving her from the clutches of that fearsome dragon. But the fond memory is soured as she remembers how he dropped her, as if she were a sack of potatoes, and a fresh wave of fury washes over her. After her bath, she slips into her nightgown, and while brushing her beautiful, flowing hair, she wonders why her heart races every time she sees him. She has a profound feeling that he is on the verge of something significant, finding her gaze inexplicably drawn to him. She then blushes, embarrassed to realize her heart pounds at the mere thought of him. Later that night, under the quiet veil of midnight in the Sierra dormitory, Liam finds himself unable to sleep, his mind restless. Deciding a walk might clear his head, he slips out into the moonlit academy grounds. He then summons the Goblin girl, who materializes instantly, singing a little tune as she declares herself at her master's service. As usual, he tasks her with a mission, to use her infiltration skill and stealthily investigate the academy's facilities. However, his instructions are cut short when he sees her attire. He's shocked to find her dressed in a school uniform and immediately demands to know why. She simply replies that she likes to get into character for her missions. Liam lets out a weary sigh, relenting with a simple fine. But he urges her to hurry, reminding her to use her stealth skill to slip into each of the academy's facilities and gather information. She just laughs reassuringly, promising it's no problem, and telling him he can relax. Liam glances at the night sky, commenting that the other one should be arriving soon. True to his word, not long after, the Goblin fairy appears, reporting that she has safely left the formerly enslaved girl in the care of Liam's sister. He offers a grateful smile, thanking the fairy for her work, but quickly apologizes for having another request so soon after her arrival. He asks if she could map out a complete layout of the academy. The fairy seems a bit confused by the vague request and asks him to be more specific. Liam awkwardly clarifies that he needs a detailed diagram of the grounds. She turns to him, slightly exasperated, wondering why he didn't just say that from the start. She agrees to map the area, but her tone suddenly becomes serious, her expression turning suspicious. She asks him what he's planning to do. Liam turns his gaze toward a specific location in the distance. He simply says, "I'm going there," declaring that it is time for a stealth mission. Shortly after, he arrives at the imposing Dean's Tower. Wasting no time, he activates his shadow material camouflage skill, silently approaching a window on an upper floor. He knows there's a chance that even this level of concealment might not be enough to go completely unnoticed. Inside, a small, influential group is gathered. Wesker, the Academy Dean, Milane, the Director of Operations for the Magic Tournament, Professor Eddie, and the Student Council President, Gaia. The draconian Eddie, adjusting his glasses with a sharp glint, declares that a certain individual poses a significant threat. He presents a formal document, stating that the full extent of the new student's capabilities remains a dangerous unknown. Furthermore, he argues, the boy is an utter mismatch for the Academy's noble culture and sacred traditions. At this, Wesker turns and questions Milane. He demands to know if it is true that our protagonist defeated the Thunder Dragon, a beast intended to cull the weaker candidates. She confirms that it appears so, explaining it was a necessary measure to preserve the Academy's pristine reputation. In the end, however, she adds that the boy's actions resulted in quite a considerable mess. The Dean grows thoughtful, murmuring that, our protagonist seems to possess a truly extraordinary strength, but this only enrages Eddie, who slams his fist upon the table. He furiously proclaims that students of such a prestigious academy must possess far more than simple, brutish strength. They must, he insists, belong to a renowned demonic lineage, making it clear they cannot allow trash from the Goblin race, the lowest of all races, to steal a place among them, because otherwise, they would all prove themselves unworthy to appear before the great founder, Dual Wesker. He once again asks Milane if her true suggestion is that the student's true nature should be forcibly exposed during the magic tournament. Precisely, she replies with chilling certainty. She clarifies that the student in question entered of his own free will. Whether he lives or perishes is entirely his own responsibility. After all, she adds with a dark implication, it is quite common for accidents to occur during the magic tournament. The old man takes a slow, deep breath, thinking to himself that everyone in the room is as extreme as they have always been. He then comments aloud that they are debating over a mere goblin, a creature who should never have even qualified for the entrance exam. Mylène considers that perhaps they should establish some form of new, official restriction, so that unfortunate cases like this do not happen again, all while our hero listens to their plotting from just outside. The professor then comments that if no one else is willing to protect the Academy's great and storied traditions, he will. Lime then reflects that even with the promise of equal opportunity for all who wish to enter, judging from the whispers he's overheard, such words are meaningless when the higher-ups are mired in corruption. At that very moment, Wesker senses a shift in the air, a look of deep intrigue crossing his face before he rises, stating that he fully understands the situation. He then tells everyone to act as they see fit, announcing that he is retiring to his chambers to rest. After the old man departs, Mylène turns to the others, skeptically asking if they truly believe he grasped the reality of their discussion. Eddie contacts Gaia, informing him that he will be adjusting the tournament bracket, ensuring Gaia faces a student from his own faction. With a chillingly sinister look, he makes his orders clear to the Draconian. He is to cause an unforeseen accident. This, he claims, is to protect the Academy's dignity. Gaia calmly replies that he understands and will see it done. Our hero is startled to discover that the red-haired individual is, in fact, a Draconian. He realizes, however, that he will have no choice in the matter, and that Gaia will prove to be a worthy adversary. Mylène laughs, remarking that she never expected the highest-ranking noble to become so passionately involved. Against a mere goblin, no less. Eddie shouts in desperation, pleading with Mylène to take the matter with greater seriousness. He begs her to stop her games, while our protagonist reflects on how his nightly stroll has been exceptionally worthwhile. Having discovered some truly unexpected things, he departs and returns to his dormitory. The Goblin Girl reports all of her findings, explaining that her verbal account is merely a summary of the full situation. She also emphasizes a critical detail, a very suspicious hidden entrance leading to an underground warehouse. It's concealed behind a bookshelf in the Grand Magic Library. The fairy then instructs our hero to take out a piece of paper. She reveals that it is a panoramic map of the entire academy. Lime is pleased and thanks them both for their incredible work, but his moment of satisfaction is cut short as something from the top of his dorm captures his attention. He sees the figure of someone wielding a sword. Observing the tireless training, Leo felt a flicker of surprise and made a mental note of the boy's dedication. The fairy observes that it's genuinely admirable for someone to be training so late, noting he has been at it tirelessly since she began mapping the academy. She also discovered that he is a student named Kobold, who belongs to another of the low-ranked clans. He is even staying in the same dormitory as our protagonist, and the boy's dedication seems to know no bounds. He continues to train without pause, prompting Lime to turn away, deep in thought. After returning to his room, he decides he shouldn't jump to any hasty conclusions about this institution. While trying to sleep, he becomes irked by something and calls for the fairy, who drowsily asks what he desires. Lime demands to know why she is attempting to sleep on the floor instead of a bed. She sighs, reminding him that she is an exceptionally cute little fairy. Therefore, she questions how a lady of her stature could possibly rest on the cold, hard ground. The fairy then coyly asks our protagonist if she could lie down with him, to which he bluntly replies, no. He explains that he might accidentally crush her if he rolls over in his sleep, a moment in which the fairy conceives an idea, followed by a brilliant flash of light. Right before our protagonist's eyes, he is left astounded by what has just transpired. The fairy has transformed into a stunningly beautiful girl, leaving our protagonist utterly at a loss for words. He eventually tells her to cease her foolishness, but the fairy merely laughs and confesses she was only teasing him. She muses that the goblin goddess would likely give her a stern scolding for trying to charm him. She also considers that our protagonist's little sister would not approve in the slightest, and with that thought, she reverts to her normal form. She lies down on the bed prepared for her and wishes our protagonist a peaceful good night. He takes a deep breath, pulls up a chair, and begins to review the information she had gathered throughout the day. He thinks to himself that he must summarize the findings from his reconnaissance mission before sleeping, knowing the next day will be incredibly busy. The next morning in the cafeteria, Lime is eating when his eyes catch something across the room. He sees his friend Letty laughing and conversing with some girls from afar, right up until the moment Letty turns and notices him watching. She began to wave, beckoning him to join their table. Leo waved back politely, but had his reservations. Placing himself next to the girls from the academy's most elite dorm, felt like an unnecessary complication. He returned to his meal, his mind replaying the bizarre events of the previous night. The pressure was on. Only 5 days remained before the start of the Magic tournament. A voice cut through his thoughts, asking if the seat was taken. Leo nodded, telling him to feel free. It was Caleb, who appeared deeply grateful. In that instant, Leo realized he was the same boy from last night, the very same one he had seen training with such relentless focus. Caleb then asked if Leo was also staying in the Seer dorm. Learning they were dormmates, a smile touched Leo's lips as he expressed his hope that they would get along well. Caleb didn't waste any time, mentioning he'd heard Leo was set to participate in the upcoming Magic tournament. He asked if the rumor was true. Leo confirmed it, cautiously inquiring if there was some kind of problem. Caleb's face lit up with excitement, assuring him there was no issue at all. In fact, he was also competing. Suddenly, a hulking figure loomed over them, grabbing Caleb and demanding to know what he was doing there. He growled that no one had given him permission to sit in their section. Leo noted the brute's hostility but held his tongue. Caleb, visibly flustered, tried to explain that it shouldn't matter where he chose to eat his meal. The large student bellowed that a low-ranked creature like him had no right to be seated in this area. Growing more frustrated, Caleb retorted that no such rule existed. It was at that moment Leo stepped in. He firmly gripped the larger student's arm, telling him to back off. Stunned, the bully demanded to know who Leo thought he was. Leo calmly replied that he was a goblin, and also low-ranked, then asked if that meant he wasn't allowed to sit here either. The student's face contorted with rage upon discovering that the challenger was also from a lower rank. A sinister laugh escapes him as he declares this is perfect. He's about to personally teach the freshmen the rules around here. Cracking his knuckles with a sharp pop, he summons his cronies to help him deliver a painful lesson to our protagonist. The protagonist merely chuckles, stating he understands completely and inviting them to try their best, all while poor Kobold trembles in fear. Thinking this is entirely his fault, Kobold watches in horror as the big brute wastes no time, lunging forward to land a devastating blow. He roars that the newcomer should never meddle in other people's affairs, but his attack is met with a deceptively simple movement. Our hero effortlessly blocks the punch, leaving the brute confused by what just occurred, and Kobold is equally astonished. While firmly gripping the man's arm, our hero reflects that causing a major disturbance here would be a poor first impression. It would certainly leave a bad taste with the other students, and with that realization, he chooses a different path. He decides to resolve the matter quietly, avoiding any unwanted attention. Lime applies a subtle, focused pressure to the big guy's arm. The force sends the bully crashing to his knees, his mind unable to process what's happening, as it's clear the protagonist hasn't moved an inch. His friends watch in sheer panic as he screams in agony. Lime releases his arm, leaving a vivid red handprint burned into his skin. The large man cradles his arm, whining from the intense pain, as the prodigy crouches down and calmly calls him senior. He then makes it crystal clear that everyone has the right to use the cafeteria, leaving the bully frustrated and at a loss for words. At that moment, his friends urgently inform him that the boy standing before him is the very freshman from the widespread rumors. He is the one who vanquished a dragon with a single, devastating blow. Shocked, the bully staggers to his feet and points a trembling finger. He vows that someone will eventually deal with the protagonist, revealing that the formidable draconian faction is watching. The Flaming Breath Division is already keeping a close eye on him. He then smirks, wondering aloud how long the upstart will truly last. Lime simply takes a deep breath and turns his back, saying nothing. Kobold rushes to his side, thanking him and apologizing for the involvement. Lime tells him to relax, insisting it was no trouble at all. The boy then confides that he also registered for the Magic tournament. He wanted to test his own power and perhaps surprise everyone, but he admits with a defeated sigh that he doesn't think he has any real chance of winning. A wave of self-pity washes over him, but it's abruptly cut short by a startling thought. He realizes he's completely forgotten the courtesy of an introduction. The boy reveals his name is Loot Arcadia. Our protagonist, Lime, introduces himself, but his expression freezes upon hearing the other boy's name. "Are you truly Loot Arcadia?" Lime exclaims, his shock evident. Loot confirms, a hint of confusion in his eyes, as he asks if they have met before. Still reeling, Lime quickly dismisses the question, telling him to forget it, but inwardly, his mind is racing with the implications. He knows that name all too well. In the future, Loot Arcadia is destined to hunt the hero's forces to the very ends of the earth. He will become the most formidable warrior in the Order of the Black Knights. Later, as they arrive at the Seer dormitory, their conversation resumes. Arcadia turns to leave, saying he'll see him later, but Lime's voice suddenly calls out, stopping him in his tracks. Surprised, Loot turns back and asks what he needs. Lime hesitates for a moment, then asks, Assuming it isn't a problem, could I join you for your nightly training? A flash of alarm crosses Arcadia's face. He wants to know how Lime could possibly have known about that. After a brief, awkward silence, he cautiously agrees, saying Lime is more than welcome, and that he hopes they both give it their all. Lime's demeanor shifts, becoming intensely serious, as he declares he wants to discuss the main topic. Arcadia is bewildered by his new friend's sudden change in expression. The protagonist states, "As I recall, your younger sister is a nun serving in the Dark Church, is she not? The one located deep within the territory of the demon god Chanel, one of the 7 great notables." The boy affirms this, his suspicion growing as he questions how Lime knows. Lime casually replies that it was merely a rumor he'd heard. "But I need you to listen to me very carefully," Lime insists, his tone grave, "because sometime in the near future, your sister will be sent on a missionary assignment to a village near the border with the human world. When that time comes, you are to tell her she must return home immediately. No stops, and no looking back, under any circumstances. Consider this as repayment for your help in the cafeteria," he adds firmly, "and I expect you to honor this favor." He then asks if his instructions are clear. Arcadia, though visibly unsettled by the cryptic warning, confirms that he understands. Lime bids him farewell, promising to see him later. At that moment, his fairy companion materializes out of thin air. She immediately wants to know if her master is plotting something sinister. Lime reflects silently that if his newest friend, he knows this is his only chance to rewrite his destiny. He remembers all too well that his sister's tragic end was the catalyst that sent him down the darkest of paths. So, the path forward is clear. Awaken Arcadia's true power, and at all costs, ensure his sister lives. Several days later, under the soft light of dawn, Leo stands outside the Magic Academy, his gaze fixed on targets hidden amongst the trees. He channels a sliver of his magic, striking the marks with precision, confident that his plan is taking root. Nearby, Arcadia stands poised, sword in hand, his focus absolute as he waits for the perfect moment to act. Then, with a single, unhesitating slash, he cleaves the rushing waterfall, parting the torrent of water in two. Stunned by his own feat, he turns to Leo, his eyes wide with disbelief. He exclaims, unable to comprehend how quickly his swordsmanship has advanced. Leo simply replies, "Of course it has." Arcadia, buzzing with excitement, insists it's all thanks to the invaluable advice Leo provided during their relentless training. He reflects that beyond Leo's notorious dark magic, his skill with a blade is on an entirely different level. He can't help but wonder why a swordsman of such caliber was ever placed in the seer's dorm. Leo just smiles, accepting the compliment. As their session concludes, Arcadia sheathes his sword, noting that the Grand Magic Tournament begins the very next day. He assumes this is their final training session, but Leo stops him, his tone suddenly serious, as he asks for his friend's full attention. Leo praises him for his incredible progress, acknowledging his tireless training and uncomplaining spirit, calling that positive attitude his greatest weapon. However, Leo's expression grows somber, pointing out that after training with him for the past few days, he has noticed something. He explains that Arcadia has yet to tap into his true, dormant potential. Utterly confused, Arcadia asks him what he means. Leo reveals it is a power that only manifests in the wake of unimaginable, soul-crushing trauma, a kind of pain so profound, one would do anything to never experience it again. His gaze intensifies, making his next words crystal clear to Arcadia. He states firmly that he never wants Arcadia to endure such a thing, but then adds the grim reality that without it, his full power may remain locked away. He could have spent his entire existence, a lifetime, completely oblivious to the incredible power dormant within him. Still grappling with the revelation, Arcadia manages an awkward smile, admitting that he is not entirely sure he grasps the full meaning. Liam takes a deep breath, indicating he anticipated this confusion, and then asks his friend to close his eyes for a moment. He then extends a hand toward his friend, invoking his dark magic with a silent command. Sinister analysis, confirming his own suspicions. The analysis reveals that the majority of the darkness within his body is inert, like a sprinter attempting a record run while shackled to a massive block of iron. Liam also reflects on how astonishing it is that his friend has progressed so far while being burdened by such a state. He knows his power will surge to unimaginable heights once this internal shackle is finally broken and those chains are removed. Liam is certain now that Arcadia possesses the strength to awaken on his own, even without the catalyst of that devastating tragedy. He then calls out to Arcadia, his voice laced with power, commanding him to stay still before striking him with a decisive, calculated blow. The boy feels a bizarre sensation course through him, but the protagonist places a steadying hand on his shoulder and offers reassurance. "Everything is all right for now," he says, though the boy remains confused. his mind racing. It felt as if something had pierced straight through his body. Liam turns away, announcing that their training for the day is concluded. Seeing as the following day is the main event, Arcadia smiles in agreement and says he is right. The next day, within the Grand Academy Coliseum, the opening ceremony of the Magic Tournament finally begins. Liam, Arcadia, and the entire Draconian faction, led by the formidable Gaia, march into the colossal arena. Melane's voice booms across the stadium, declaring that this day marks the official start of the Magic Tournament, igniting a wild roar from the crowd. She passionately urges everyone in attendance to make sure they do not miss a single moment of the glorious spectacle. To inaugurate the competition, she announces that a speech from the venerated founder, Master Du, will officially open the tournament. At that very moment, an intricate magic circle illuminates the arena, and a holographic projection of the founder materializes before the masses. Liam's focus intensifies as he recognizes the familiar weave of the spell. It's an incantation uncannily similar to his own Goblin summoning technique, but he discerns subtle variations, noting that this is not true teleportation magic. It's a remote projection. Damien's voice booms across the stadium, declaring the brilliant students before him as the future of the Demon Lord's army. He then challenges them to demonstrate the full extent of the skills they have painstakingly refined thus far. They must unleash their power against their opponents in battle, but he stresses one cardinal rule: the weak must yield of their own volition. After his speech, the entire Colosseum erupts with a thunderous roar of excitement, the air crackling as the Magic Tournament is finally about to commence. Leo keeps the harsh reality at the forefront of his mind. The persecution and the crushing taxes are the reasons his people suffer. The suffering of everyone in his secret village is a weight on his shoulders, steeling his resolve to win this tournament at any cost. He must eliminate the source of their pain. With that grim purpose, he moves to a more secluded area to gather his thoughts. He begins reviewing the information for the tournament, observing that there are 128 participants registered. That means there will be 6 grueling matches to reach the finals, but he is confident that magical exhaustion will not be a concern for him. He decides it would be best to fight with his full strength from the very beginning, and he begins to scan the area for his first opponent. His search is cut short when someone approaches from behind and presses something shockingly cold against his face, making our protagonist shout out loud. Crying out that it's freezing, he jumps back in surprise, demanding to know what in the world that was. He sees Lily, laughing as she offers him an ice cream, teasing that she never imagined he could make such a loud noise. After a moment, they find a quieter place to sit down. The blonde girl takes a deep breath and begins to speak. She explains that she saw him in the participants' zone from her seat in the spectator area and had been calling his name over and over. Yet, he had completely ignored her. He replies that he never heard her, asking if she had forgotten about the sheer chaos in the arena. Amidst the overwhelming roar of the crowd, it was impossible. She just laughs and says that at least she was able to find him. Her tone then shifts to curiosity as she asks if the tournament wasn't supposed to be open only to current students, specifically those with at least 1 year of attendance at the academy. He seems taken aback by the question and simply replies that, no, it is not. Brushing it off as a common misconception, Letty takes a thoughtful sip of her milkshake, acknowledging that she understands. A moment later, Liam glances aside, catching her gaze fixed intently upon him. "Is something on your mind?" he asks softly. Flustered, she quickly insists it's nothing, but then voices her true concern about him participating in the tournament. The idea of him facing the Academy's most formidable fighters immediately after enrolling just seems impossibly reckless to her. That's precisely why, she admits. He seems so strange, a comment that visibly catches him off guard. He draws a steadying breath, assuring his friend she needn't worry, while thinking to himself that she would surely explode if he called her the strange one. She pouts, complaining that he always acts so much like an adult, until a sudden memory sparks in her mind. She produces a small bag and insists that Liam take it, leaving him looking thoroughly confused as he accepts the gift. His confusion melts into surprise when he opens it to find chocolates, and he immediately asks if this is about that one time. A faint blush touches her cheeks as she confesses that she has felt guilty ever since she ate his chocolate back then. But then, in a sudden burst of frantic energy, she stands up and pleads with him not to get the wrong impression. This is merely an apology, she insists, and there is absolutely no hidden meaning for him to misinterpret. Liam is utterly bewildered, trying to make sense of her outburst, while the now mortified blonde girl begs him to forget the whole thing. He reflects internally that he still has absolutely no idea what goes on inside her head. Despite the chaos, he thanks her sincerely, admitting it makes him genuinely happy and cherishing this kind of authentic human feeling the world offered. She turns away, calling him an idiot under her breath, just as the grand chime of the Academy clock tower echoes through the air. Letty declares that her time is up, then rises, raises a determined fist, and wishes Liam the best of luck. He mirrors her gesture, tapping his fist against hers in a moment of solidarity, before turning to leave with a final goodbye. She feels a familiar blush creep up her neck as her heart begins to race, wondering why this strange feeling happens so often around him. Later, during the opening match of the Magic tournament, a judge's voice booms from a glowing magic circle, signaling the start of the battles. The announcer's voice resonates, calling forth the combatants for the inaugural match. From the Seer dormitory, the infamous Goblin Lime. He is a figure who defies all tradition, entering the tournament only 7 days after his arrival at the academy. An audacious newcomer who knows no fear, set against his opponent from the Lucifer dormitory, the Draconian Orphan Shield, a distinguished member of the formidable Blazing Breath faction. At the mere sight of the Draconian, the young women in the stands erupt in a frenzy, completely captivated. Their cheers turn into a thunderous demand for him to obliterate the cursed goblin, prompting Mylane to question the professor. She asks if he is truly pitting the faction's second strongest member against the protagonist, to which he coldly confirms. He makes it abundantly clear this is no game, as the dean watches their exchange in stoic silence. As the protagonist steps into the arena, the judge inquires if he is certain he requires no weapon for the duel. Lime calmly affirms he is fine, a response the Draconian interprets as a grave underestimation of his power. In that instant, the judge bellows for the match to commence, and without hesitation, the Draconian launches himself forward. He roars that he will finish the protagonist in a single moment, activating his Draconian form ability, Wyvern, from midair. The crowd's excitement crescendos as they question if the Draconian is truly unleashing his ultimate power so early on. From the very outset, Orphan begins to channel his potent elemental coding ability. He hurtles towards the protagonist, vowing to incinerate him and reduce him to nothing but ash. Lime recognizes the diving attack, dismissing it as painfully predictable. But suddenly the very ground beneath him begins to fracture. A torrent of chains and vines erupts from the earth, tearing apart the arena and ensnaring one of his legs. The restraints quickly engulf his entire body, leaving him to wonder what treachery this is, as a horrified Letty screams out in shock. Desperately wanting to know what is happening, she realizes the Draconian never had any intention of engaging in a fair fight. Then, just before delivering the final blow, he roars for the protagonist to meet his end, a threat that sends a genuine chill of dread through Lime. Even from across the arena, a surge of magical energy erupts in the arena. It is Renu, the third-ranked prodigy from the Blazing Breath faction. Her majestic green dragon form grants her dominion over all living flora, bending nature itself to her will. The Draconian warrior bellows, his voice echoing with the creed that a wise combatant always enters the fray, fully prepared. Liam watches with sharp focus as Orphan's devastating charge connects, unleashing a truly tremendous impact. As a cloud of dust billows upwards, cheers erupt from the crowd, certain of the outcome. The blonde girl, however, watches with bated breath. Her heart pounds with concern for her friend. Then, as the dust settles, a lone figure is revealed. Our protagonist, standing firm, with his sword drawn. Releasing a torrent of intense power, he had miraculously blocked the Draconian's overwhelming strike with his demonic blade. Orphan stares in disbelief, letting out a raw scream, his mind unable to process how this could be possible. In a flash, Liam vanishes, reappearing instantly behind the dragon to deliver a powerful, non-lethal blow with the hilt of his sword. The strike sends Orphan crashing face first into the ground. Liam approaches his fallen opponent, confirming he's been knocked unconscious. He then turns to the judge, his composure unbroken, and calmly asks if the match has officially concluded. The judge, snapping back to his duty, immediately announces that the winner of the very first match of the Magic tournament is the competitor, Liam. Both the supervising professor and the operations director are left utterly stunned by the result. Unable to comprehend the shocking upset, they can only stare in silence, while Wesker observes with a look of growing intrigue. He reflects that while the protagonist has managed to remain discreet, his darkness levels have already secretly ascended to the legendary SS rank. The blonde girl's anxiety erupts into pure joy as she leaps up, shouting praises and calling her friend's performance amazing. Later, while walking through the quiet backstage corridors of the arena, our protagonist reflects on his victory. He muses that he managed to clear the first fight without much trouble, a thought interrupted when he runs directly into his little sister. With her are the Goblin Fairy and the formerly enslaved girl he rescued, all of them absolutely beaming with excitement to see him. The fairy darts eagerly toward her master, explaining that they were all incredibly anxious to witness him in action. And, disguised as students to witness the match, Lily is buzzing with excitement. She exclaims that her big brother was absolutely incredible during his battle, declaring that he looked truly radiant out there. A warm smile spreads across his face as he gently pets their heads, remarking that it always brightens his day to see them in such high spirits. Lily eagerly presents something to her brother, urging him to take it with a proud laugh, explaining that the two of them worked very hard to prepare it. Liam opens the gift to find a beautifully made, delicious-looking pie. Then his gaze softens as he turns to the other girl, gently asking if her name is Mia. She responds with a series of quick, affirming nods, and a genuine smile touches the protagonist's lips as he expresses his heartfelt thanks to them both. As she watches her brother's retreating figure, she can't contain her feelings and calls out to him, shouting words of encouragement for his next fight. She tells him with all her heart that he can win. Later, in the waiting area for tournament participants, Liam rises to his feet, steeling himself for his second bout, when a sudden commotion causes him to turn and investigate the source. A young woman rushes towards him in a state of sheer panic, shouting that her message is one of extreme urgency. She gasps that the girl he was with earlier has suddenly collapsed. Alarm screams in his mind, and he is moving in an instant. He implores the girl to lead the way as quickly as possible, and as they race through the corridors, he desperately calls out his sister's name. A frantic prayer repeats in his mind, begging for her to be all right, until they burst into an empty, open area, leaving him utterly confused. As he stands there, wondering where she could possibly be, the very same girl who brought the warning materializes just behind him. With a cruel smirk, she unleashes a terrifying power. He spins around, fury igniting in his eyes, only to find his feet ensnared by thick, grasping vines. He remarks with cold clarity that he never imagined being deceived by someone like her, but grimly admits that he allowed his guard to drop. His concern for his sister's safety was the one vulnerability she could exploit. His eyes narrow as he demands to know if she is a member of the Blazing Breath Guild. Maintaining her constricting magic, she simply throws her head back and laughs. But with a surge of power, Liam effortlessly shatters the binds restraining him. He makes it perfectly clear that such a simple deception will not work on him again, to which Rena just smirks, retorting that she was already well aware of that. In that exact moment, figures emerge from the shadows as several members of the Blazing Breath Guild materialize, completely surrounding the protagonist. Just then, Gaia appears on the scene, announcing that he couldn't care less about the tournament, for the entire Draconian Order was present solely to face him. The leader of the Draconians levels a finger at our protagonist, his voice cutting through the tension with a clear and chilling message. He declares that this will be where our hero perishes, completely unknown to the world, his demise staged as nothing more than a tragic accident. Lime observes the unfolding situation in utter silence, while Renu erupts into laughter, mockingly asking if the protagonist is trembling with fear. When asked if he has any last words, he pauses for a moment in thought, before calmly replying that 3 minutes should be more than sufficient. Then, unleashing a torrent of dark power, he declares that within those 3 minutes, they will all be soundly defeated, explaining that if the fight were to take any longer, he runs the risk of being late for his next tournament match. At these words, Gaia is sent into a frenzy. He roars with unbridled rage, vowing not to hold back, as he begins to manifest his terrifying, blazing power, shouting that the protagonist will pay the ultimate price for his insolence. As his own dark energy swirls around him, Lime coolly states that his opponents are the ones who should be preparing for what's to come. The protagonist steels his resolve, intending to unleash the full, unbridled might of his darkness upon them. His preparations complete, he beckons all the Draconians to come at him at once, as he genuinely doesn't want to miss the second match of the tournament. The leader of the Draconians, now incandescent with rage, wastes not a single moment, and activates his flaming salamander draconian form, immediately preparing his elemental coating. Weaving dark magic into his attack, he unleashes a devastating conflagration fireball. In response, Lime merely extends his hand, activating a dark magic ability of his own. The suicidal veil materializes, forming a barrier before him, just as a massive explosion rocks the entire area. Although our hero successfully blocks the initial assault, the other Draconians expertly exploit the opening. While he is momentarily obscured, they surge forward, hurling insults and shouting that his back is wide open for the taking. However, he reacts in a flash, summoning his demonic sword, Mjolnir, and deftly blocking their synchronized attacks. He summons his dark flame magic, unleashing a searing volley that incinerates the attacking Draconians. Suddenly, his instincts scream as another attack from Gaia closes in, and the remaining Draconians exploit the opening created by their leader's assault. They lunge forward, shouting with certainty that their target is completely and utterly surrounded. Liam, however, simply focuses on the incoming attacks, and a colossal explosion erupts, prompting the Draconians to celebrate prematurely. Convinced that their adversary has been vaporized, They fail to notice the shadow that materializes directly behind them. With breathtaking agility, Liam moves like a phantom, effortlessly neutralizing each one of them. Gaia watches in stunned disbelief, baffled by how a supposed mere goblin could dismantle his guild members. Liam grants him no time to recover, unleashing his next ability. The attack strikes several draconians at once before violently slamming the final one into a nearby tree. Gaia lets out a furious scream, cursing the protagonist as he activates his ultimate transformation, the salamander draconian form. His body morphs and expands into that of a true dragon, and he charges ferociously toward Liam. Unfazed, Liam prepares himself, channeling the raw power of Dark Impulse into his fist. Without a hint of hesitation, he anticipates the dragon's trajectory. He meets the charge not with a retreat, but with a powerful uppercut to the creature's chin, launching its massive frame into the air. Seizing the opportunity, he leaps skyward, coiling his arm back to deliver the final judgment. With cold precision, he unleashes a relentless barrage of countless blows, ending with a final strike that lands with bone-shattering force. The draconian howls in agony as it plummets to the ground, crashing in a heap, defeated and powerless, reverting to its human form. Liam casually brushes the dust from his clothes, all while a hidden observer watches the scene unfold from a distance. It is Renew, her face etched with profound concern over the turn of events. Liam begins to walk, his path taking him directly to her. He calmly asks her how much time it took. She looks at him, bewildered, and asks what he means. He clarifies, asking for the exact duration in minutes. With some reluctance, she pulls out a pocket watch. She answers that it only took him 2 minutes and 30 seconds. He nods, satisfied, and walks away without another word. Thankfully, this disruption didn't interfere with the tournament's timing, as she collapsed weakly to the ground. Still unable to process the shocking turn of events, her mind raced. Back in the battle arena, the judge's voice boomed. He announced that the second round of the Magic tournament was about to begin, but paused upon calling for the draconian participant. He soon realized the combatant had yet to enter the arena, and proceeded to explain that according to the established rules, any student who fails to appear on time is disqualified by default. With that, he loudly declared our protagonist the winner. Liam suspected that his absent opponent might have been one of the individuals he had already dealt with. A short while earlier, Lily and Mia were amazed by the unexpected twist, while Eddie was simply stunned, demanding to know what happened. Meanwhile, a subtle smile began to form on the dean's face as he quietly contemplated the unfolding situation. The blonde-haired girl was thrilled by her friend's victory, a sentiment shared by Lily, Mia, and the little fairy, who, despite not understanding what had just transpired, was simply happy that he had won. Our protagonist began to reflect. In both the third and the subsequent match, his opponents had also failed to materialize, and each time, the judge continued to announce him as the winner. He knew he had handled most of them away from the spotlight, so he concluded there wasn't much to be done about it. The professor, however, was in utter disbelief over the tournament's outcome. Then, while our protagonist waited for the next inevitable forfeit, an opponent finally strode into the arena and was announced. Liam smiled, murmuring that he knew it would be him, and that this was the perfect stage for a grand finale. His friend, Luke Arcadia. Wasting no time, Liam activated his absolute eye. He immediately saw his friend's status information and realized Luke had already achieved the rank of a Dark Knight. He was evolving far faster than anyone could have expected. The blonde boy laughed and addressed his friend directly. He claimed he had only made it this far thanks to him. Our protagonist thought that was exactly what he needed to hear. He hoped Luke would now fight with the unyielding resolve required to save his sister, then smiled and said he was glad to see him there. With a hand resting tentatively on his sword's hilt, Arcadia speaks up, his voice heavy with reluctance, admitting there's something he must say. He then raises his hands in a gesture of surrender, declaring his forfeiture of the match, explaining to his friend how profoundly grateful he is. As a token of that gratitude, he wishes to gift him this victory, but the protagonist's expression hardens. He declares his utter displeasure with such an offer. He demands a true duel, insisting that if Arcadia genuinely wants to express his thanks for their friendship, then they must cross swords for real. The blonde warrior draws a slow, steadying breath, his hand returning to the grip of his blade. As his aura begins to surge, a confident smile plays on his lips, and he questions if the protagonist is truly prepared for what is to come. He warns that he might not be able to restrain his full strength, but a thrill courses through Lime, who eagerly responds that he is counting on it. With mutual respect, they both roar a wish of good luck to one another, and without a moment's hesitation, the judge bellows for the battle to commence. Instantly, the two combatants launch themselves forward in a synchronized blur, their meeting triggering a colossal explosion that shakes the very foundations of the arena. A thick cloud of dust billows out, obscuring the view, The aftermath of their swords colliding with cataclysmic force, unleashing an intense wave of power, Lime immediately registers the immense pressure behind his friend's swing. It was exactly the kind of strength he expected from a man destined to one day become the world's most powerful warrior. Leaping back to create distance, Arcadia grips his sword and begins to channel his energy, a sight the protagonist observes with keen focus. Lime reflects on the core principle of a dark night, the unique ability to manifest a profound darkness from within their own being. This inner darkness fuels both their body and magic, and his friend's particular style is to use it for an explosive amplification of his physical prowess. Harnessing this power, Arcadia unleashes his first assault, a devastating slash of pure energy that tears through the air toward the protagonist. Lime parries the attack with almost casual ease, noting internally that his friend, for all his power, still lacks the crucial element of true malice. Seizing the opening, he readies himself and retaliates with his full might, forcing a stunned Arcadia onto the defensive to block the powerful blow. From the stands, Lily watches in awe of her brother's incredible strength, while even Letty is visibly taken aback by the display. Meanwhile, the professor and Melaine are on the edge of their seats, shouting that it does not matter to them which of their prized students emerges victorious. The crowd is desperate for the protagonist's downfall, as the battle's intensity skyrockets, with both warriors landing a relentless barrage of blows. Their eyes remain locked, meticulously analyzing every move as they clash in a seamless, unending exchange. In a critical moment, the protagonist's foot catches on a stone. The blonde boy sees it as the ultimate opening and surges forward. He declares that his friend won't escape this time, but Liam narrowly evades the devastating attack. He barely has a moment to breathe before realizing his friend is already striking again, leaving no time for contemplation. Yet, with his breathtaking agility, he masterfully dodges once more, leaping backward just out of harm's way. He immediately pivots into a swift counterattack, his sword slicing through his friend's weapon and shattering it in two. Arcadia stares in disbelief at his broken sword, while Liam channels a dark, formidable power into his own blade. He roars that the fight ends now, unleashing a powerful strike that misses his friend by the barest of margins. As Arcadia leaps back to regain his footing, the protagonist notices something small fall from inside his rival's clothing. He reflects inwardly, never having imagined that his friend could possibly dodge the lethal gleam of his sword. A surge of excitement courses through him at the battle's unexpected turn, while the blonde boy glares at his ruined weapon. He defiantly casts the broken hilt aside. Liam sees this and sheathes his own sword, a gesture that leaves Arcadia utterly confused. As they both begin to radiate raw power, the protagonist contemplates the inherent weakness of dark knights. They are vulnerable to deceitful spells and illusions, which is precisely why he yearns to face his friend in a pure, head-on battle. As he settles into a combat stance, he thinks this will be a true measure of skill. Arcadia remarks, "It seems you're looking down on me." Liam calmly tells him not to misinterpret his actions, explaining that he holds complete faith in his friend's capabilities. He genuinely wishes to savor a true fight against him. A wide, challenging grin spreads across the blonde boy's face. Releasing an overwhelming wave of intense power, he warns his friend, "Just don't come blaming me later, if you end up regretting those words." They then lock eyes, the air electric with the promise of the imminent final clash. As their power continues to surge uncontrollably, the terrified judge makes a swift retreat. He vanishes in the blink of an eye, leaving the two combatants to lunge at each other with their full might. The exchange intensifies into a frantic dance of destruction, with both fighters landing a relentless flurry of blows. The blonde boy feels a strange energy coursing through him, a smile spreading across his face as he realizes the sheer ferocity of their clash. He wonders at the thrill consuming him with every strike against his friend, a single thought echoing in his mind: he wants to win. Yet, he also wishes for the battle to conclude, understanding that the more their fists meet, the more his own insatiable desire for power awakens. They press their attack, not a moment of hesitation between them. Their next collision unleashes a cataclysmic explosion that rocks the entire arena. Lime is thrown backward, questioning what just transpired, only to see his friend radiating an even more immense aura of power. He asks himself if Arcadia is genuinely evolving in the heat of battle, and prepares for the worst. This situation could quickly spiral out of control. He decides he must end it with the next strike. With that resolve, he surges forward again, calling out for his friend to meet him with everything he has. Arcadia stands perfectly still, watching his friend's attack close in, and at the final possible moment, he sidesteps the blow with impossible grace. Lime is left in stunned disbelief. He turns, startled, barely able to perceive his friend's blinding speed. In an instant, Arcadia appears at his side, launching a powerful kick that Lime barely manages to dodge just in the nick of time.